Mr. Trump goes to Washington, the triumphant return of 45, now returning as 47 elect. You know, last time I think he was here, it was to sit in court as Jack Smith laid charges against him on a federal criminal case that's now going to disappear. What a day. And we've got all the details for you. It almost looked like Joe Biden was overjoyed to greet Donald Trump today. Just wait till you see it. Also, we've got, what else have we got? I'm so excited about that segment. I forgot Pete Hegseth. They're going nuts over Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense. They're lying about him, of course. We'll tell you the truth. That's why you come here. And what's it going to look like when Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy sit down a la Office Space and says to every bureaucrat in Washington, what is it you exactly do here? It's going to be glorious, and it's coming up right now. We're brought to you by Birch Gold. My name's Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry. Trump Force One landed at Washington Reagan Airport today, and it's just a beautiful sight to behold, isn't it? You got to love it when the president-elect can just fly in on literally his own plane. And that was the scene as Donald Trump arrived triumphantly in Washington, D.C. once again, to meet with President Biden and House Republicans and plan for the future that is now, as his cabinet continues to be announced and regular announcements every single day about what the shape of this Trump 2.0 presidency is going to look at. I can tell you this, all the right people are pissed off at his appointment so far, and that's got to be a good thing. That's got to be a sign that he's doing something right. This is a lot different than the first Trump presidency. For those of you who don't remember, the transition was a little awkward. They didn't know exactly how to go about it. They were still sort of talking to people and interviewing people and making a public show of sort of, I don't know, should Mitt Romney be Secretary of State? Should that person be Secretary of State? There were cabinet positions that didn't get filled until rather late in the game. We're just 1 week after Election Day, and he's already got half of his cabinet filled, including some important positions. That's a good thing. And as I mentioned, Donald Trump, last time he was in Washington, D.C., he was here to face charges in a federal courtroom brought by Special Prosecutor Jack Smith. Well, today he returned triumphantly, as you see, as the president-elect. And Jack Smith, he's cleaning out his office. He'll be resigning his position as special prosecutor before Donald Trump has the pleasure of firing him. That's what an election does in this country. That's what political activism does. That's what you did this election day 2024. The scene in the White House, in the Oval Office specifically, was extraordinary. Take a look and take a listen to what Joe Biden had to say about the man who will now be taking over operations of that very office just 8 weeks from now. And remember that Joe Biden, up until just a couple of weeks ago, referred to this man as a fascist, as an existential threat to our nation and to democracy in America itself, and called each and every one of us garbage for supporting him. We'll take a look at Joe Biden today.
Well, Mr. President-elect and former President, thank you, Donald, congratulations. Thank you. And looking forward to having like we said, smooth transition. Do everything we can to make sure you're accommodated, what you need. And we're going to get a chance to talk about some of that today. So good. Welcome
Thank you
back.
very much. And, thank you very much. And politics is tough, and it's in many cases not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate it very much. A transition that's so smooth, it'll be as smooth as it can get, and I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
A couple things about this. There's so many fascinating images in the Oval Office today, and we're going to be sharing a few. But the first thing that comes to mind here with that beautiful roaring fire, by the way, in that amazing historic office, look over Joe Biden's left shoulder, the bust of Robert F. Kennedy Sr. Joe Biden fashioned himself a Kennedy Democrat. He said that Bobby Kennedy, assassinated in 1968, served as a hero to him, someone that brought him into politics back in the day and inspired him to run for office. Bobby Kennedy smiling over Joe Biden's shoulder as it was his son, his namesake, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who threw his support and endorsement over to now President-elect Donald Trump that spelled the doom not just for Joe Biden's presidency, but Joe Biden's successor and really the legacy of the Biden presidency reduced to a one-term affair. It's a fascinating image, I think, and worth noting as Kennedy looks on. Also, some inside information. A White House correspondent for Real Clear Politics and friend of this program, Philip Wegman, reports that First Lady Jill Biden, she's a doctor, don't you know, handed Trump a handwritten letter of congratulations, according to a White House source, and expressed her readiness to assist with the transition. This, of course, coming just a day after incoming First Lady Melania Trump rejected Jill Biden's offer to sit and have tea, as is customary between the two First Ladies during a transition. Melania Trump saying, yeah, thank you, no thanks. I already know my way around the place, and I don't need to sit and bullshit in front of the world and act like I like you and act like you like me, because the things that you said about my husband actually literally threatened his very life. So you can take your tea and shove it up your ass. I don't think Melania Trump actually said those very words, although I would like to think that she thought them when she politely declined. But I'd be fascinated to read what's inside that handwritten letter of congratulations, wouldn't you? You beat that. Good for you, Donald. I don't like you much, but I hate her even more. That's probably close to what it said. Before Donald Trump made his way to the Oval Office to meet with Joe Biden, he met with the Republican caucus on Capitol Hill, the triumphant Republican caucus on Capitol Hill. Here he was introduced by Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand to your feet. The 47th president.
Very nice gathering. Isn't it nice to win? It's nice to win. It's always nice to win.
We've got a little bit more of Donald Trump's remarks before the House Republican caucus here, and I think they're noteworthy. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Addressing Republican House leaders, let's listen.
It's always nice to win. A lot of good friends in this room. So you know we had like historic kind of numbers, especially for the president, but we won't get into that. But the House did very well, and I think we're responsible for 31, helping you with 31, meaning we could have lost by quite a bit, and we ended up, I guess you'll be 5 up. Are you looking at 5 or 4? 5 or 4, right? Doesn't matter. We get used to 1 for a little while. When you can get used to 1, you can get used to anything. So I just want to thank everybody. You've been incredible. We worked with a lot of you to get you in, and you helped me, and you helped me too. And my numbers were, so they say the 129 years is the most important election in 129 years. That's pretty good. I said, who is the 129 years? What was that, Doc Ronnie? Who's 129 years ago? I'd never looked because it started at being 100, and then they upped it to that. But it's a great compliment. We won the majority by 7.1 million. We won, which is great because Republicans aren't supposed to be winning the majority, Marjorie. You know that, right? And we won that, and we won it every way, all 7 swing states by a lot. And then Michigan was great. Couldn't be better, I'll tell you. Michigan was great. And we had a couple of people, almost New Jersey is right, just a few points. It's got them very worried because they say, well, next time if we go up even a fraction of what we went up, you're going to win New York, you're going to win New Jersey, you're going to win places that weren't winnable. California, too.
California, too. Boy, that just send a shiver up the spine of Democrats everywhere, I assure you. But, listen, this is great, and it's a great victory lap, but he's right about one thing. It's going to be a challenging road in the House of Representatives. Frankly, it's a challenging road for Mike Johnson himself, as he hopes he's got 5 or 6 as his majority, but there's already voices suggesting that maybe he shouldn't be the speaker. Here we go again, right? That'll all get settled the first week of January when we get back from New Year's, before January 6th, supposedly before January 6th, when the Electoral College is determined. It's going to be a challenge for Mike Johnson, or if he faces a challenge for the gavel. But it is nice to see the president address that room of Republicans as the president-elect and as the majority in the House, as we now have both houses of the legislative branch as well as the executive branch. That's a good thing. Let's swing back over to the White House, though, because as I mentioned, there were extraordinary images coming out of this meeting between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. This one captured by John Ashbrook, our buddies over there at the Ruthless podcast. Look at that smile on Joe Biden's face. What is happening here? What is he so happy about? And what is that grin all about? Now, on the surface, we could mock the guy and you forcibly remind him that just a few weeks ago, he was calling the man on his left, you know, the person that he's smiling at as if he's the mascot from the old Cleveland Indians. He was calling that guy Hitler. He and his staff were calling that guy Hitler and a fascist and an existential threat to our country. And now he's just sitting there like, so what are we to believe? That you're okay with Hitler? Or that was all political bullshit? Or is he smiling because he knows what's going on behind the scenes? Hold that thought for a second. I was also struck by this image. There's something about this image that gets me. With Donald Trump sitting below the portrait of Abraham Lincoln in the Oval Office, with a rather serious and stoic look on his face, knowing that he has survived an assassin's bullet, and the man hanging on the wall above him did not. Knowing that the reason the man hanging on the wall behind him did not survive that bullet was because that man, Abraham Lincoln, was an existential threat to the status quo. And then he tried to mend the nation that was so divided. And he was on the path of doing that. And there were forces in this country who were so intent on keeping us divided that they decided to put a bullet in that man's head. There's something about that image that I find chilling. And why? Well, because I remember other images of transitions, like this one. This was the day that the Barack Obama addressed the White House staff after Hillary Clinton's defeat. This was the first time they called Donald Trump Hitler and a fascist and a sexist and a misogynist and an existential threat to the country. And everyone looked at this picture thinking, oh, look how angry and sad they are, ha ha, and everyone was dunking on them. And everybody was laughing because Valerie Jarrett and Jen Psaki and Susan Rice and all of these other people from the White House were so upset and so defiant and so angry that they had lost and their chosen successor, Hillary Clinton, had gone down in defeat. And we were all slam dunking and we were all high-fiving. And little did we know at the time what was happening behind the scenes as this picture was blasted around the world. As they all looked sad and depressed and angry and frustrated, we missed what was really in their eyes. Look at Valerie Jarrett now. Look at Jen Psaki now. Look at Susan Rice now, knowing what we know. That's the look of resistance. That's the look of a plot already put in play to undermine the incoming president with an investigation into the Russian collusion hoax, a FISA warrant that allowed them to spy and eavesdrop and wiretap the Trump campaign and eventually staffers within the Trump White House. This is an outgoing administration already planning to bring down Donald Trump. So forgive me if I see this image and I don't see Joe Biden saying, yeah, that's right, you beat Kamala. That's a good way to see it. But I see Joe Biden as part of that team 8 years ago, plotting the downfall of Donald Trump. I see this Joe Biden like the cat who ate the canary. I see this Joe Biden as a dangerous threat to the next Trump presidency. The good news is that Donald Trump gets it now, and he knows exactly what's at play. That said, our buddy Jack Posobiec over at Human Events has some interesting reporting. Apparently, Biden staffers didn't even want to show up for today. They didn't want to be a part of a picture like that Rose Garden photo op during the Obama administration. They've called in sick, or they've been crying at their desks, according to a White House official. They have a bit of the flu today because they didn't want to see the bad orange man. in their house, their White House. Some of them did show up, and CNN captured an extraordinary moment as many of the junior staffers left their offices and stood on the steps of the old executive office building to watch events transpire as the president-elect and former president left his limousine to enter the executive mansion.
And it's really stunning. Those are Biden staffers. They're in the EOB. Some of them are lower level, some of them perhaps a little bit higher, but they're there to watch a history moment being made that nobody standing there wanted. I were sitting here.
Yep, none of them wanted it, but they're there to see it. Hard to see that image and not be reminded once again of this one. Burn it into your memory. Know exactly what was going on then and what hopefully everyone in the incoming Trump administration has their guard up about what could be happening right now. Because if they did it last time, there is literally nothing stopping them from doing it this time. That said, the transition is now officially underway after the visit by the president today, after the meetings with his transition team and the announcement of many of the cabinet positions that the president has appointed and hopes to officially fill. It means that soon we will have Donald Trump as president of the United States running the executive branch of government and ultimately negotiating with his Democrat counterparts on Capitol Hill. I mean, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but after seeing Joe Biden meet with Donald Trump today in the Oval Office, I've got a bit of a memory now of President Donald Trump meeting with his adversaries in that very same room. Who among us doesn't want to see this happen one more time?
None of us have
You
said.
want to know something?
You've said it.
Okay, you want to put that on
You
my.
said it.
I'll take it.
Okay, good.
You know what I'll say? Yes. If we don't get what we want, one way or the other, whether it's through you, through a military, through anything you want to call, I will shut down the government.
Okay, fair
Absolutely.
enough.
And
We
I am
disagree.
proud, and I'll
We
tell you what,
disagree.
I am proud to shut down the government for border security, Chuck, because the people of this country don't want criminals and people that have lots of problems and drugs pouring into our country. So I will take the mantle. I will be the one to shut it down. I'm not going to blame you for it. The last time you shut it down, it didn't work. I will take the mantle of shutting it down. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Oh, look at Pence. What are you doing, dude? No, he knew exactly what he was doing. Let me ask you something. If Democrats stand in the way of this president after this election with this majority in this mandate, if they stand in the way of Donald Trump building the wall, securing the border, and beginning the deportation, excuse me, the deportation of criminal illegal aliens in this country, if they stand in the way of that, and Donald Trump says, fine, you're going to stand in the way, then we're going to shut down the government until you say yes. You think that they're going to go out on that limb after what we just saw last week? If they had listened to him then, if Pence had listened to him then, if Republicans in the House and Senate weren't terrified of headlines from CNN, they're shutting down the government, if they had just listened to Trump then, but they will this time. I guarantee they will this time. And I want Trump to do that again. I want him to do exactly what you just saw. Every time you've got Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries or whoever ends up being the minority leader, because I don't even think Chuck Schumer is going to get the job. I think Democrats are sick of him too. Whoever it is, I want Trump not to do a photo op where they bring in the cameras and they all smile pretty and then they usher everyone out of the room. I want Trump to do exactly that. Keep the cameras rolling, turn on the microphones. Let's go, Chuck, right now. Let's let the American people see exactly how the sausage is made. It's amazing how things develop when those cameras are on and the microphones are recording. It's a new day, everybody. The transition is underway, and we're just 2 months away from Trump 47. Buckle up. It's going to be a ride. Well, the election went our way, right? And so we can all take a collective exhale since we've been holding our breath, wondering who would be sitting in the Oval. Now we can get to work on some major issues the country's facing. And one of the most significant is our national debt. The fact is, our country is broke, and that debt is a house of cards that can't quickly be dismantled. So the strategy remains the same for you. Diversify your savings. So many things are out of our control, even out of President Trump's control. It's important to have a safe haven for your savings. Birch Gold Group can help you out with this. They're going to help you convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. And the best news is it does not cost you a penny out of pocket. You want more information? I know you do. Text my name, Larry, to 989898. Get your free info kit on gold. Right now, through Black Friday, you're going to receive a free 1-ounce silver eagle for every $5,000 purchased with Birch Gold. Diversify your savings with Birch Gold. Text my name, Larry, to 989898. Claim your eligibility for free silver today. President-elect Donald Trump is filling a lot of his cabinet spaces, and he's filling them rather rapidly and decisively. And there have been some eyebrows raised about some of them, but no more so than last night's stunning announcement that a Fox News host and 20-year Army veteran Pete Hegseth will be your new Secretary of Defense. Now, Hegseth has an impressive resume, but you wouldn't know it if you're watching CNN, MSNBC, the broadcast networks, or reading newspapers. No, you'll have this news delivered to you the way Joy Reid did on MSNBC last night. Here she is delivering to her dwindling audience the news of Pete Hegseth.
The former and future president is moving quickly to fill the clown car and round out his cabinet before he changes his mind and fires them all. Moments ago, Trump announced that he has selected Fox weekend morning show host, you can't make this up, Pete Hegseth, to serve as Secretary of Defense, because why not? The former...
Okay, so a couple of things here, Joy. First of all, with your choice of makeup and hairstyles, varying colors, varying lengths and such, I would refrain from any clown references if I were you. It just conjures images, ma'am. I'm just saying. Work on toning all of this down before you call anyone else a clown. That said, if we're reducing the entirety of Pete Hegseth's career and resume and qualifications to Fox News weekend morning host, well, you're either ignorant or you're lying to your audience. He graduated from Harvard and Princeton, if that matters to anyone out there. And he is a 20-year veteran, a retired officer from the United States Army. He served at Gitmo as well as combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's the recipient of the Bronze Star twice. And in his civilian life, post-military, he has been a tireless advocate for not only veterans and his fellow combat war veterans from the global war on terror, but also active duty personnel, where he has been pushing back and pushing back hard, very, very hard on the state of the Pentagon and the leadership right now in the Pentagon, how politicized it's become, how, well, there's no other word for it, how woke it's become. They've lost sight of their main function, which is to be the biggest, baddest military on the planet, so that no one would even dare threaten us or our allies. And if they do, well, they will feel the blunt force of our boot on their ass. That's what our military is there for. And that's what Pete Hegseth seems to be advocating. Now, I'll be honest with you. I have a lot of friends who have served in the military, who, you know, help me out and advise me on military-related issues. I never served in the military, and I certainly don't want to speak on behalf of people in the military. However, you don't have to be in the military to have an opinion on who your Secretary of Defense should be. We are the people in this country. It is our government that we control and direct, and the Pentagon, by definition, is run by civilians like you and me. So our opinion is valid whether we served or not. That said, I draw on the opinions of friends of mine who have served, and last night my phone was kind of blowing up, and it came in 3 different categories. Former military who are all in and think that Pete Hegseth is the perfect choice to shake up and fix the problems at the Pentagon. Another side of the equation of retired military who think that he is in no way experienced enough to run that bureaucracy. And even though he served, doesn't have the big picture national security credentials to be able to effectively run the Pentagon. And then the third category are people who have reservations, but are willing to stay open-minded and give him a chance because, well, we need someone new. We need a new direction for the Pentagon because the same old has not been helping or working. I tend to put myself into that third category as well. And just so you're fully informed, those who are gravely concerned about Mr. Hegseth as Secretary of Defense, at least the people who were communicating that to me, well, they also happen to be people who, after the military careers, ended up working in the military corporate industry. They worked for all of those contractors and had relationships with those contractors that do business with the Pentagon and the military. And I think that that's noteworthy. Those who have hesitations about Pete Hegseth also seem to be those who have been able to gain stature and wealth within what we now pejoratively refer to as the military industrial complex. Listen, we need a military industrial complex in this country. It's a good thing, but it's not the only thing, and it certainly shouldn't be running things. And I think that's the whole point of Pete Hegseth being there. I like the fact that he hasn't gotten rich off of the military industry. That's actually a good thing. It allows him to be objective as he takes over that job. And the things that he's been saying about our military, well, I think that it's instructive. And it allows me to be open-minded, if not optimistic, about how Mr. Hegseth might run the Pentagon. Here's a good example.
There's a chance to course correct it, but it would take a new Trump administration going after it really hard.
How would they correct it?
Well, first of all, you got to fire, you got to fire the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and you got to fire this. I mean, obviously, you're going to bring in a new Secretary of Defense, but any general that was involved, general, admiral, whatever that was involved in any of the DEI woke shit, it's got to go. Either you're in for war fighting, and that's it. And that's the only litmus test we care about. You got to get DEI and CRT out of military academies, so you're not training young officers to be baptized in this type of thinking. And then, whatever the standards, whatever the combat standards were, say, in, I don't know, 1995, let's just make those the standards. And as far as recruiting, to hire the guy that, did Top Gun Maverick and create some real ads that motivate people to want to serve. And there's lots of other ways in which you could identify who gets promoted and what, but there's an ethos change. I mean, there's a reason people don't want to serve, because they don't trust that their senior leaders are going to have their best interest in mind in combat. I know there were mistakes made on our tours all over the place, but I, at least for the most part, had a sense that my senior leaders were committed to the completion of the mission for the right reasons. And maybe there were strategic differences and all that other stuff, and it wasn't always perfect, but that trust is broken, and you have to reestablish that trust by putting in no-nonsense warfighters in those positions who aren't going to cater to the socially correct garbage.
All right. Now, this is incredibly important, first, because the substance of what he has to say, because he speaks from experience, and he obviously has been speaking with not only people who are currently serving, but people who are gravely concerned about the direction of the military and can quickly spot exactly what the problems are and where the problems are coming from. That's important, number one, in terms of the substance, is what you just heard. The second thing, and maybe this is just my own personal bias because I'm in the business of communicating ideas, it's important for me that somebody in this position has that ability. All right. The person who's going to shake up the Pentagon, and I think since Donald Trump ran on the idea and concept of reorienting some of the misguided directions that our military has taken over the last 8, 10, 20 years, that whoever's going to be doing that needs to be able to effectively communicate exactly what they're doing, why they're doing it, how they're doing it, and give us updates along the way about its progress and success. Hegseth is a communicator. By definition, that's what he's been doing for the last several years of his adult post-military life. And that's a critical component to this thing. Don't overlook the importance of that. All right. If you remember right, Rumsfeld, when he was Secretary of Defense during the Bush years, he was great at that. He could go to the podium and properly articulate and condense exactly what was going on in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and in other areas of the world where the war was going on. You may not like the policies, but he was good at communicating those policies. Hegseth's going to have a team around him actually executing the changes that need to be put in place, but somebody's got to be the one who does the interviews, who does the press conferences, and who can properly communicate to the American people exactly what's happening, not just for our sake, but also for the men and women in the military, so they're not in the dark. Part of command is being able to properly and clearly communicate to those who serve under you. That skill is not something that you can just read in a book. It's something that you get that's inherent to you. Hegseth's got it. Also important about Mr. Hegseth as he approaches this job is he understands who the enemy is. If you ask anyone in the military right now or anybody with national security experience, if you ask them what's the biggest threat for America on the global stage, they will give you one 2-syllable word. And it's not Iran, as Kamala Harris said the other day when she was running for president. It's China. And Hegseth gets that.
The Pentagon is in the book, the exact amount of years, but in the past X number of years, 10, 12, 15, the Pentagon has a perfect record in all of its war games against China. We lose every time inside the Pentagon war games. We know what our real capability. You see, we didn't even get to this part of the war on warriors. I mean, the military-industrial complex, the way we procure weapon systems. We're always the way our system works, the way our bureaucratic system works, where the speed of weapons procurement works. We're always a decade behind in fighting the last war, whereas China, we have what did Rumsfeld say? You go to the war, the army you have. We have the army. China's building an army specifically dedicated to defeating the United States of America. That is their strategic outset. Take hypersonic missiles. So if our whole power projection platform is aircraft carriers and the ability to project power that way strategically around the globe, and yeah, we have a nuclear triad and all of that, but a big part of it. And if 15 hypersonic missiles can take out our 10 aircraft carriers in the first 20 minutes of a conflict, what does that look like?
Yeah.
I mean, and if they've already got us by the balls economically, which you pointed out very well, with our grid, culturally, there's plenty of elite capture going on around the globe. I mean, and then microchips and everything. Why do they want Taiwan? They want to corner the market completely on the technological future. We can't even drive our cars without the stuff we need out of China these days. I mean, they have a full spectrum, long-term view of not just regional but global domination, and we have our heads up our asses.
Yeah.
All right. That's critically important too. And the focus on China is something that the military is already trying to rectify, but they've been sent in so many different directions. They need clear leadership. That starts with the commander-in-chief, but it certainly will be aided by a Secretary of Defense with that same vision. So I was monitoring how the various morning news outlets today were covering this story. During my morning radio show that I do in Washington, D.C., I've got all the TVs on in my studio so I can see what's going on the various cable networks as well as the local stations here in Washington. And it was a fascinating thing. On Fox News, Fox and Friends, obviously they were reporting on their colleague, Pete Hegseth, now nominated as the Secretary of Defense, and they play B-roll video and still shot images of Hegseth while they talk about him. And every single one of the pictures, every single one of the videos on Fox News showed Pete Hegseth in uniform, either speaking at an event at the podium in sort of a formal officer's attire, or in country from his combat days in Afghanistan or various other moments of his combat career, dressed in uniform, carrying a firearm, showing the American people that Donald Trump's selection and nomination of Secretary of Defense is in fact an actual real live warrior, a recent warrior who's been in country, as little as 7-8 years ago, I think. You switch over to CNN and MSNBC, and they were doing the same discussion, and they were showing B-roll and photographs of Pete Hegseth, but all of those pictures showed Hegseth on the set of Fox and Friends or at some event acting as an anchor for Fox News or delivering a speech at CPAC. That was the B-roll they were using. They were just describing him as a television host on Fox News and a political activist at the CPAC conference. They weren't actually saying or certainly showing anything about his military career. And the one topic of conversation, the one subject they focused on the most with regard to the content of Pete Hegseth's character or his perspective and worldview on the military, it all boiled down to this clip.
I'm straight up just saying we should not have women in combat roles. It hasn't made us more effective, hasn't made us more lethal, has made fighting more complicated. We've all served with women and they're great.
Mm-hmm.
It just, our institutions don't have to incentivize that in places where not traditionally, over human history, men in those positions are more capable.
There you go. He is opposed to the idea of women in combat. And what does he know? He only served in combat. And it's amazing because it took what I think it was 9 years ago, I think, or maybe 10 years ago, when Obama's Secretary of Defense decided to go ahead and allow the first look at women in combat. This is 10 years old at the most, this policy of women in combat. At the most, 10 years old. But CNN is acting like, there we go again. Those women in the military are going to have to trade their uniforms for the Handmaid's Tale outfits because of this Neanderthal who wants to turn back the clock. This is his position. This is his view. He'll do what the president tells him to do, of course. And which women in which combat roles is something certainly that even women in the military are open to considering. Is a woman flying a fighter jet the same thing as a woman in a submarine or on a aircraft carrier? And is that the same thing as a woman in the United States Marines in an infantry position? Well, that's a discussion that we're willing to have, that we should have as an American people, citizenry. I think it's fair to say that flying a jet is not the same thing as being in a foxhole. If we still have foxholes. Do we still have foxholes? Not sure about that. But trust me, this is what they're going to try to get him on. This is what they're going to try to get him on. Women in the military. But while we're talking about how CNN is discussing this story, let's not forget our pal, Scott Jennings, who was on the panel last night as this story broke. And imagine being Scott Jennings and having to defend Pete Hegseth's credentials for the job of Secretary of Defense against that stalwart, brilliant military mind, Carl Bernstein of Woodward and Bernstein fame. Because, Carl really knows everything there is to know about being a Secretary of Defense and running the Pentagon. Well, that's what Jennings had to do last night, and I think he did a pretty good job. I think you'll agree.
Anyone have confidence in the current leadership of the Pentagon and the way the defense situation has been operating for the last several years? I mean, from the Afghanistan pullout, which was an extreme debacle for which no one was held accountable. We've had spy balloons flying over the United States. We built a $300 million pier as a public relations stunt, which wound up killing an American service member. I'd say I've had just about enough of the so-called insiders running the Defense Department. I think we ought to give Pete Hegseth a chance because he's got two insiders. All the criticism of him is that he's not the expected Washington pick, and I'm just saying to you that the American people just voted against the expected Washington pick. So he's got 20 years in service, Afghanistan, Iraq, 2 Bronze Stars, Princeton, Harvard. Yeah, he's on TV, but so are the rest of us.
By the way, that listen you just gave,
I think he ought
that
to
listen
be
you just gave is really interesting because you highlighted a bunch of things that the civilian leadership of the country decided on. In the military, their job was just to execute. They execute.
How did it go?
I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
How did it go?
In terms of the decision making, you're assigning decision making responsibility to the military over things that civilians were responsible for.
So you make a good point. The civilian leadership made decisions, and then the people they put in charge of the Pentagon carried it out, and it was all pretty much a disaster. So now we have a new president who I think got elected in part because of some of those disasters, and he's going to put in some of the non-insiders in charge of not just this agency, but a bunch of them. Now, look, they've got to perform. They've got to perform. I mean, we got 53 U.S. senators that are Republicans, and Pete Hegseth, he's an American hero. The man won 2 Bronze Stars for his service, and he's been a champion for veterans. He's going to have to go up there just like everybody else and prove his knowledge of how to do this job. He's not immune from that, but we ought to give this man a chance.
Of course, give him a chance and keep an open mind about it. And it's pretty remarkable to watch this all pan out as they try to reduce this man's entire life and legacy in history to, well, he's a host on Fox and Friends, a morning show host. Well, let me just say, I'm a morning show host too. And I'm not qualified to be Secretary of Defense, but there are jobs that I could do in the Trump administration. Not that I would take them, because then I'd have to leave you, and I wouldn't want to do that. But it's obscene what they're trying to do to Pete Hegseth. Of course, he deserves confirmation. The President of the United States appointed him. Let him get the job unless there's something extraordinary that comes up about his past or his abilities. But I don't think that there should be. Again, 2 Bronze Stars in combat, where all of these people who are criticizing him, most of them didn't serve at all. And one other thing. The people who are currently saying that Pete Hegseth is not qualified to be Secretary of Defense, these are literally the exact same people who were just fine with Richard/Rachel Levine as the Deputy Secretary of Health and Human Services. They were just fine with Pete Buttigieg and his qualifications to be Secretary of Transportation, you know, going from mayor of South Bend, Indiana to Secretary of Transportation. No one said Pete Buttigieg wasn't qualified for that. But I've got one even better. Literally every single person who is questioning Pete Hegseth's qualifications to be Secretary of Defense were just fine with the idea of Kamala Harris being Commander-in-Chief of our military, or Tim Walz being one heartbeat away from being Commander-in-Chief of our military. Think about that for a minute. Pete Hegseth? There's no way he could run the Pentagon. But Kamala Harris and Tim Walz can be the boss of the guy who runs the Pentagon. Get out of here with that. Get the out of here with that. Last night, President Trump also made good on one other campaign promise. He announced that Vivek Ramaswamy would join Elon Musk in the newly formed Department of Governmental Efficiency, DOGE. Something tells me Elon Musk just won a bet by getting Trump to put DOGE in an official press release. The two of them are going to focus on how to fix the broken bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. I imagine the guys from Office Space calling everyone into a cubicle saying, what is it you actually do here? How would you describe your job? What did you get done today? For a little glimpse into how Elon Musk might address this new position, take a look at some of the things he said on the campaign trail when he was campaigning for Donald Trump in Pennsylvania.
The amount of waste that happens with the federal government is really staggering. It's a staggering amount of waste of taxpayer money. And if we're, for any given expenditure, we have to say, well, what does this do for the citizens of America? Like, how is this good for the people of America? It's their money. Like, for some weird reason, a lot of people in the sort of, state or whatever, the politicians, they seem to forget that the money being spent is your money. And if it's not being spent in a way that is beneficial to the American people, it's a misuse of the funds.
Yeah, it's just that simple. And I know it may seem remarkable that this is a new idea in Washington, D.C., but it literally is. They should have been looking at every single tax dollar in that way from day one in our government. And, well, if you read the history books with the formation of the Department of Treasury and the formation of the very first federal government under President Washington, there was deep concerns about it. But boy, that's long gone now. They truly do believe it's their money. They think your money is their money, and they get to decide how much of it you get to keep at the end of each week. And they'll do with it what they will, damn it. And you won't complain about it. Otherwise, we'll put you under surveillance. That's pretty much where we are right now. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy going in and actually reorienting the perspective on this and looking at it as a businessman. I think that's what most Americans were hoping for the first time they elected Donald Trump to the presidency. And Lord knows he had a lot of headwinds and he had a lot of resistance. And he also had a priority of other things that he needed to get done. And he got a lot done with regard to government efficiency. One of the most important things was no new regulation could be proposed in the Department of Labor or Agriculture or Environmental Protection without eliminating 2 existing regulations. That was huge. And it was a big part of why the economy boomed under Donald Trump. Now, if Musk and Ramaswamy have their way, look at the economy to boom even more. I believe in them, and I believe in their ability to integrate with the Department of Office and Budget. Look for OMB. Look for whoever gets named as the Director of Office of Management and Budget, OMB Director. It's an overlooked position in Washington, D.C., but I'm telling you, whoever gets that job and how well they integrate with these guys in governmental efficiency, that's going to be your game changer in this administration. I believe in their ability to do it. I also believe that as long as people like this guy, as long as they're spitting mad and angry and bleeding through the eyes in rage at the idea of Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy going in and actually fixing what's broken in the Washington bureaucracy, then it's got to be a good decision. Just take a look at a little bit of Lawrence O'Donnell from last night. This is astounding.
Well, Elon Musk suffered a humiliating demotion tonight by Donald Trump. The theory that Elon Musk might become, in effect, a co-president or the real president, while Donald Trump, in effect, retires to a life of golfing, suffered a significant setback tonight when Donald Trump announced that he would give Elon Musk a job that does not exist and will last at most 18 months.
All right. Now, let me just pause there so I can give you a little bit of perspective on this. This is classic liberal propaganda, which you see played out every night in prime time at MSNBC, as long as it lasts. I hear they're up for sale right now. That's just a crying shame. This whole idea of Elon Musk being the co-president or really running things while Donald Trump got to kick back and relax and go into semi-retirement after he won the election. That is a complete and total fiction that was created by these guys. So let me play this out for you. For the last several weeks, they've been telling their audience, you know, Elon Musk is this crazy billionaire and he's really funding this whole thing and he's buying votes in the swing states. And as soon as Trump wins, he's going to be the one who's actually running things and he's unaccountable and it's terrible. And now Trump announces this 18-month special committee, the Department of Government Efficiency, and this guy now gets to do a victory lap saying, oh, it turns out he's not going to be co-president. It turns out that entire thing that we made up and pretended was happening is not going to happen. So it's a big loss for Elon Musk. It's propaganda. All of it is lies, 100% lies. Do we really think that Elon Musk, while he's trying to design rockets that are going to get us to Mars so we can settle and put a settlement on that planet, and while he's trying to perfect the electric vehicle industry in America, and while you're at it, re-engineer social media as we know it so that it can be free and fair for all voices on the X platform, while he's doing all that, you really think he wants to run the Department of Health and Human Services, Larry? That's right. Your name is Larry. Anyone out there who goes by the name Lawrence, just understand something. They're really Larrys. They're Larrys with an attitude. Okay. That's all this guy is. I guarantee you that when he was in school, when he was in 7th grade, or when he was in high school, everyone called him Larry. I know that because, you know, we're similar ages. And nobody, and I mean nobody, when they were a kid, went by the name Lawrence. Here's what happened with this guy. Larry O'Donnell decided in college, or maybe when he started his business career, that he wanted to be called Lawrence because he wanted people to take him seriously. So now he's Lawrence O'Donnell. Screw you. You're a Larry. Own it. Embrace it. I love being a Larry. Don't you? No, apparently he doesn't. He's a self-loathing Larry. They're the worst kind of Larrys. All right, we'll go back to Larry O'Donnell here. Go ahead, Larry.
And worst of all, Elon Musk, the richest person in the world, was assigned a working partner who, like Musk, has also never worked in government before, Vivek Ramaswamy, who's not even a billionaire. Elon Musk didn't even get his own press release from Donald Trump. He had to share it with Vivek Ramaswamy. Elon Musk got the first shared press release of any of Donald Trump's appointment announcements. Even the Fox host, who isn't even the richest person at Fox, got his own press release from Donald Trump when Donald Trump announced that he would nominate Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense. That's right, a Fox weekend morning host. If all goes well for the personnel in the Trump administration, unlike the last Trump administration, if all goes well, Elon Musk will be the first one kicked out because Donald Trump already kicked him out in the press release announcing his appointment to do a non-existent job. Donald Trump announced, quote, Elon Musk, working in conjunction with Vivek Ramaswamy, will lead the Department of Government Efficiency. If you lead a department in the American government, you are a cabinet secretary. The Department of Defense is led by the Secretary of Defense. The Department of the Treasury is led by the Secretary of the Treasury, and so on. There is no such thing as the Department of Government Efficiency. Creating such a thing would require an act of Congress and a budget for such a department. The press release reveals that the Department of Government Efficiency, which does not have an office or a desk or an office chair anywhere in the government, will probably be housed in the executive office building beside the White House, because the Trump press release says that the Department of Government Efficiency, quote, will partner with the White House and Office of Management and Budget to drive large-scale structural reform. So that sounds like Elon Musk will be allowed to send his budget ideas to the yet unnamed director of the Office of Management and Budget.
Honestly, this is the first time I've seen Larry O'Donnell in quite some time. Who watches this crap? Who is even entertained by it? His delivery is lamentable, but let me just explain a few things to all of you, as well as to Larry, if he's still watching. Love you, Larry-O. A couple things. The job doesn't even exist. You know what else doesn't exist, Larry? Climate czar. There's no office of the climate czar. There's no such thing as the Department of Climate. The climate czar position was created for John Kerry, and he spent billions of dollars. He has a staff. He has desks. He has personnel. He wastes money flying all around the world, spewing out carbon emissions so he could sit and tut-tut with the global elites. That's not a job that exists. It's pretend. It's made up. Just like Kamala Harris as the border czar. That's not a job that exists. Presidents do this all the time. Well, if you're the head of the department of something, that means you're a cabinet secretary. No, it's not. You're defeating the entire purpose of this idea of government efficiency. The whole point is not to have a big bloated government. The whole point is to have these guys go in and figure out what's broken and get rid of it, you idiot. The whole mindset of old style Washington, D.C. that, well, we got to create an office and build a building and create undersecretaries and deputy undersecretaries and third remove Department of Undersecretaries and then have all the federal employees that will be there for life underneath you. There are buildings for the Department of Agriculture that are 4.5 blocks long south of the Washington Mall. As you drive through them, these buildings were built in the Roosevelt era when we were a huge agricultural nation where giant numbers of jobs and family farms were under the Department of Agriculture. We have a very different economy and a very different agricultural ethic and culture in this country today. And yet those buildings still exist. And all those offices still exist. And somehow they haven't been able to reduce that department or reduce the number of offices or people who work there. And that's the whole point, Larry. If you're really interested in having a Department of Government Efficiency, then you don't do what you've done for the last 200 years to make the government inefficient. You blowhard, sanctimonious moron, Larry. Also, he doesn't get the joke. I promise you that as Trump was writing up this press release that O'Donnell is fixated on, Elon Musk did not care if his name was alongside Vivek Ramaswamy's. He cared about one thing, And he wanted to have Department of Governmental Efficiency, or DOGE, in the press release. Like I said, I think he won a bet with somebody. I bet you I can get Trump to actually say DOGE. DOGE is this weird, funky, fake dog meme that makes Elon Musk laugh. It's and he joke it. The Doge crypto doesn't actually exist, right, Kevin? Or does it? I don't even know. But they came up with this cryptocurrency called Doge.
Oh,
but
it's very real. It's very real.
It real. Okay, so maybe he's just trying to increase the value of Doge by getting Doge in this. But that's the whole point. Well, if it's a department, then you have to be a cabinet secretary, and only Congress can approve that. It's a department only in that it allows him to use the acronym Doge in the press release. That's all it was. He's just awful. Absolutely awful. And he doesn't get it. He doesn't get that the joke is on him. I just told you that they're going to be working with the Director of Office Management and Budget, and they're going to be reducing government waste. And listen, personally, I hope it looks exactly like this. I hope day one, Vivek and Elon walk into the office and they have a big whiteboard with all of the departments laid out there, and they do a full melee on it. They go, don't cry for me, Argentina. There's a new sheriff in town, and this is how we're going to go about our business.
Ministerio de Turismo y Deporte, afuera. Ministerio de Cultura, afuera. Ministerio de Ambiente y Desarrollo Sostenible, afuera. Ministerio de las Mujeres y Género y Diversidad, afuera. Ministerio de Obras Públicas, afuera. Aunque te resistas. Ministerio de Ciencia y Tecnología e Innovación, afuera. Ministerio de Trabajo, Empleo y Seguridad Social, afuera. Ministerio de Educación, Adoctrinamiento, afuera. Ministerio de Transporte, afuera. Ministerio de Salud, afuera. Ministerio de Desarrollo Social, afuera. Se acabó el curro de la política. ¡Viva la libertad, carajo!
That's my favorite part. Long live freedom, damn it. Yeah, Milei ran on that platform. He put out that video during the election. He won, and he's been implementing that. And finally, they've got inflation and government spending under control in Argentina. Don't cry for me, indeed. Now, I would love it if that's what Elon and Vivek did on their first day in their new pretend Department of Government Efficiency, but I don't think that's exactly how it'll go. To figure out exactly how we'll go about the job, well, let's go to the source.
Well, we just take a look at all the federal agencies and say, do we really need whatever it is, 428 federal agencies? Like, there's so many that people have never even heard of, and that have overlapping areas of responsibility. We should, I don't know, we should get, I mean, there are more federal agencies than there are years since the establishment of the United States, which means that we've created more than one federal agency per year on average. That seems a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. So we should have, that seems crazy. I think we should be able to get away with 99 agencies. I don't know. That seems a lot like a lot of agencies.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
2 per state. That's a lot.
Yeah, exactly. We should have fewer agencies, and they certainly shouldn't have overlapping responsibilities. And then we need some kind of, we just need a review of regulations to say which ones are sensible and which ones are not. Because if you've got regulators every year, they're going to add more regulations, just automatic. Like they just output regulations, and there's more laws and regulations every year until basically everything's legal. So we can't get anything done. So we need some kind of garbage collection for regulations that don't make sense. I think I'm saying very obvious things.
You are saying obvious things.
Yeah. So
which will be very unpopular things.
Yeah. I'll probably need, if this happens, quite a significant security team. So that, because someone might literally go postal on me from the post office.
But it does make sense. And the fact that people will go postal on him for doing what makes sense, makes logical sense when it comes to government efficiency. Well, that's part of the problem, isn't it? This is a man who understands what the regulations are in the realm of, say, space exploration. He's been able to navigate through the regulations as they stand, and he's still been able to win at the game better than NASA and any other industry who's lived within the realm. Any other corporation that's lived within the realm of the industrial regulations that have been set forth, because he looks at these things a different way, in a new way. And not only is he doing space exploration better than anybody before him, but he's doing it in a more efficient way, in a more cost savings way. And now suddenly he's shooting up satellites literally on a daily basis. And he's making money doing it. Not government money. I mean, he's got government contracts, but you take my point. This is exactly the approach that we want. This is the approach the American people have voted for. And he is going to meet incredible resistance. Yes, including people literally going postal. I mean, look at what Larry O'Donnell did. The problem is not just people who are entrenched and want to keep things the status quo and keep ballooning and growing this government bureaucracy in Washington, D.C., because they don't care about efficiency. They just care about control and power. The other problem, frankly, will be people like Larry O'Donnell over on MSNBC, who are just plain stupid, who don't understand it, who don't get it. They know what they know, and they know what they've been told to know, and they will never explore new ideas in any way whatsoever. They'll continue to do what they do and exercise their great skill of reading a teleprompter in front of them instead of actually creating something out of nothing, like Elon Musk has done. The good thing, though, the best thing about all of this is that Elon Musk couldn't give any about Lawrence O'Donnell's opinion. That is it today, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Sorry about the YouTube stream, but I'm glad you found us elsewhere. And if you're watching after the fact, please like us and share us and subscribe to us and do whatever you can to get the word out, because we are killing it every single day and we want to keep killing it for you. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. My name's Lawrence O'Connor, but you can call me Larry.